15 minutes after the time that we decided. So today is chapter 4. I can share you the screen. Okay, so and this chapter we have only 5 parts, but some part it require 3 people to do it, and some other part require two people to do it. So I hope that you have already arranged the in charge person for the rest of the questions. So as usual, we can start with group 1 for question number 1 and rotate to group 2 and group 3 accordingly. So please, group 1, go with your first part for the summary of the adopting policy tools through stage of development. Go ahead. Can you see the slide share?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead then. Hello? Who's in group 1? In charge of question number 1 or part 1? If group 1 not respond, we can give the question to part group 2. Group 2 for question number 1.
Hello, teacher. I'm Im Kanika. I'm responsible for question number 1. Summarize adopting policy tools through stage of development. Economic developments take time and differ greatly from country to country. Nonetheless, there is no sufficient attention to the need for different policy tools for country at different stages of development. Recent studies have looked for a single universal factor of economic growth that can be applied to any stage of development. Other research, on the other hand, indicate that determining a country binding growth strength is important. According to Lee and Kim, in upper middle and high income country, technological advancement and higher education are more efficient in developing growth, whereas in low income country, secondary education and political institutions appear to be more significant. If this approach is applied to a country industrial policy, the policy toolbox should also be tailored to the country stage of development. Traditional industrial policy tools come in the form of infant industry protection. However, if industrial development continues for another 10 to 20 years, policy tool will inevitably change because the level of those who benefit from the policy will also change. For instance, the industrial policy in the Republic of Korea, based on the study, the government shifted from traditional industrial policy to a technology policy. This dynamic shift reflected the available and desired level of firm capabilities, and it had reached its peak by the mid-1980s as firms recognized the need to upgrade to higher value-added goods and develop in-house R&D center. And that is all. Thank you.
Thank you. And anyone else want to not respond to add anything on the same part? The other 2 person that in charge in another 2 group, if you wish to say anything. No? If no, we can move to question number 2 for group 3. Summarize the shifting to more advanced form of industrial structure. Group 3, no one there. Let's move it to group 1 for question number 2. What's wrong with group 1 and group 3? Okay, let's move to group 2 again. Who is in group 2? Respond for the question number 2.
Yes, me lecturer. My name is Pong Ratana. So regarding the part shifting to more advanced forms of industrial structure, achieving an industrial structure with a high value added activity require not only an openness to trade and investment, but also the deliberations of learning and risk taking by firms and public sectors, which contributes to the rise of new technologies and markets. Wait, lecturer. So I would like to continue. So taking Taipei, China as an example, the public-private consortium to develop laptops was a successful story for their nations, as it could shift them from specializing in traditional low value-added based sectors to a high value-added sectors. Also, the Republic of Korea had the same patterns as the public-private research and development consortiums paved the way for the country to become a leader in telecommunications and information technology device when they could develop digital telephone switch. Subsequently, the public-private consortium contributed to the productions of memory chips, mobile phones, and digital televisions. So that is all from me, lecturer.
Thank you. Anyone want to jump in for another add or anything on the same question? If not, we can move to question number 3 for group 1. And 3
Good
people in
evening,
group 1.
good evening, lecturer. Can you hear me well?
Yeah. So make sure that you have 3 people to respond for question number 3. But it's a long one.
Okay, so my name is Janet Smai. So I'm responsible for a question. Actually, lecturer, this question is responsible for one person. So
I put it clearly that it's 3% would be in charge, because I see that it's long and you need to read a lot of stuff and you need to understand many points there. But if you say that it is one person to respond, it's okay. But the problem is some other people will lose the mark with doing so,
Okay, so I will start with the first one. So it's about the summary. The 3 stage of access of learning for entering high value sectors. So the very first stage is the assimilating foreign technology and know-how. So this is the very first stage for the latecomer country to access and learn for entering high value sectors. And the most important thing is the absorptive capacity, which enable the companies to learn and assimilate the inflow of external knowledge. Moreover, it should focus on enhancing the levels of the energetic human capital and providing learning opportunities for workers in private firms. Furthermore, it's enhancing the absorptive capacity requires the import of the technology and the provisions of the training, such as related law, uh, for example, like patent rights, codifications, R&D, and the know-how. Consequently, we can see the experience of the Republic of Korea in becoming a highly industrial country, including the companies of LG, for example. So my teammate will go with the second point.
Right.
I'll go with the second point. So the second point, co-development, homegrown research and development. In this second stage, it requires the setting up of local public research institutes that can conduct R&D and problem-focused development, and then transfer outcome to the private sector. Firstly, to provide more high-quality operation skill and production technology, country needs to establish joint venture with foreign partner. Then, once raising latecomer firms have built a certain level of absorptive capacity, they must establish their own R&D center. Once firms have established in-house R&D center, they explore more diverse channel of learning and access to foreign knowledge from license. The alternative include co-development contract with foreign R&D specialist firm and with public R&D institute, mastering the literature, setting up overseas R&D outposts, and initiating international merger and acquisition. For the public-private R&D, public research laboratory are mainly in charge of R&D with private actor doing the manufacturing. That's it for the second one.
So, who is the third one?
What I?
Gonna be it is the final stage which bring latecomer country.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so leapfrogging to emerging technology, it is the final stage which bring latecomer country to become emerging technology. In this state, they need to develop product in newly emerging technology. For example, the Republic of Korea is developing digital television development. Moreover, an example of leapfrogging from the PRC is its recent move toward electric engine car and the use of solar power. In leapfrogging, public R&D team take a more vital role given that the risk is considerable and coordinate initiative for inclusive standard and incentive for early initial market. Also in this state, the private firm in conducting R&D jointly. Thus, the role of public research aim is to monitor the trend of technology and provide information about the choice of proper technology standard and the identifications of suitable foreign partners.
Hello. Sorry, is my weak signal or her? I cannot hear her anymore. But you finish?
Yes, lecturer.
Oh,
I
I
finished.
Okay, I think internet problem with my side. Okay, so we can move to question number 4. I think for group 3. Group 3 haven't responded anything yet. Intra and intersectoral diversification.
Okay, lecturer. So actually, this part was responsible by Simil, but since she's absent today, so I'll cover for her. So for question number 4, explain the intra and inter sectoral diversification. So for the intra-sector diversification, it refers to the expansion into additional businesses new to the firm. Intra-industry diversification can generate economies of scope by offering the opportunities for resource redeployment across a related product market. For example, a firm can leverage its familiarity with the customer needs to increase the product quality when introducing related product to the same market. So when the hence, once the resource can be redeployed when the different products share similar input factors or customers. So the example of intersectoral diversification can be found in the case of the electronics firm Konka, which started out in the 1979 as a producer of cassette player in Shenzhen, and Konka actually begins its quest for technology as a contractor for original equipment manufacturing to advanced firm, but the profit were volatilized. And in the 1987, Konka began to produce branded product for the domestic market and to compete with the imported brand, signaling a move to become an original brand manufacturer. And 10 years into this new strategy, Konka actually set up a R&D facility in Silicon Valley to develop digital television and produce the first such set in the PRC. And a year later, Konka began mass producing high definition digital television. And the example of Konka illustrated that intra-sectoral diversification, particularly in leveraging technologies by the use of outsourcing contract to enable firm to upgrade their capabilities from the original equipment manufacturing to original design manufacturing and then to the original brand manufacturing. That's it from the intra-sectoral diversification lecture.
So you did the whole 2% part, right?
No, lecturer. It's only the first one.
But
the
who another one who will be in charge of that?
Good evening, lecturer. Since my teammate is absent today, and my name is Sokpanit, so I'll be responsible for the second part is about the intersectoral diversification. The East Asia states was successful to achieve this the inter-diversification, especially the successive entries into the higher value-added industries. And since the 1960s, they have produced the black and white television, video cassette recorders, the desktop computers, the hard disk drives, and workstation clones. And South Korea is one of the examples that has Samsung as a company success to transform itself from the light industries to the higher value-added industries. And behind this achievement, the government also played an important role in order to assist the industries by providing the institutional support, including through the joint R&D consortium, technology transfer arrangements, and tax and also the credit concession for the newer industries. According to the Professor Lee, the success apart was patent, and South Korea had filed more patents for the cycle industries like steel, automotive, desktop, memory chip, and also the mobile telecommunication. And in this process of diversification, Korea has integrated the steel, the steel firms, and created the Standard 1 protected by the government. and then a privatization for the developing countries to build more capacity, skill, and the technology. And that's all for our part. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Let's move to the last part for group 2. Thank you.
Yes, so the next part is the government has passed the steel industry promotion that in the early 1970s to create the beneficial environment for the country emerging the steel industry. By the law, the PSCo was eligible to pay discount rate for electricity, gas, and water, and to receive the discount on rail and as well as the port charge. And the park administration heavy chemical industrialization program started from 1973 until 1979 that was designed to focus on the economy on steel, petroleum, chemistry, automobile, machine tool, and shipbuilding, as well as the electronic from lightweight and the low value tax. Since 1980, the POSCO has grown and competitive that gradually reduce support for the steel industry as well as replacing the Steel Industry Promotion Act with the Industrialized Development Act in 1986 to promote competition between the market mechanism and company. He also suggested that the government industrial policy should be shift from direct support to target industrial to universal functional support, and also suggesting that the government want to developing technology and improve productivity. The POSCO plan was to reduce the share of the state-owned enterprise and the Korea development banks, giving the strategics to control their POSCO. In 1998, the government implemented a second privatization And also the purpose was to introduce free competition and market mechanism into industrial to dominate by state-owned enterprise and improve their management efficiency. So last but not least is that the privatization of the POSCO was complete in 2000 and 32 years later after the state found it in the company, and it's found the company at a fourth and fourth tune, ranks number one among the world's steel company in the term of net income to sell and net income of the total assets. Thank you. That's all on my part.
Thank you. It seems that it's very fast, right? Because we have. So now we finish all the part, and I think that I need to do a short wrap up before we talk about our research plan, and maybe we have a break if you wish to, but if not, we can continue. Let me share you the share you the slide first. Please refer to the slide in Telegram in case you find it hard to look at the screen. So I think that your friend have provided a very good answer. I just try to highlight to some extent on that. Here is for question number 1. We're talking about the adapting policy tools through the stage of development, and it is the case of Korea. So I think based on what we have discussed in chapter 3 or so, we also have some read about the Korean case. And here I just try to quote out some short information from the book also. And we have 3 points here. One is the technological development and higher education more effective in generating growth in upper middle and high income country, while secondary education and political institutions are more important for lower income country. So based on our read or our book, it tend to classify the development stage of 2 different world. One is for the lower or third world country, and another one is for the emerging or developing country, or almost we call it emerging, not advanced. US, EU, Japan, I think now Korea, Taiwan, Singapore are advanced country, while China, India, Indonesia, maybe Thailand, we call emerging country. It's kind of different definition. They say that for the upper middle income, like emerging country, the technological development and higher education. Higher education means after bachelor degree, master degree, PhD, all the main driven factor for such kind of country. While for the poor or for the developing country, they find out that the high school, education and the political regime are more important in bringing those country level of income upward. For example, like before we adopt the market economy in 1993, where the national election was first time conducted after 2 decade civil war, so that Cambodia secure the democracy, political agenda or political maneuvers. So then, after 1998, when the whole country accomplished the integration and the peaceful situation, we have developed the income of our country gradually. I mean, from I think 250 in 2000, no, not in 1998. Now we have by PPP, producer price index or producer poverty, not producer poverty, sorry, producer price parity. I think now we have more than 2,000 US dollar. So it within more than 10 years we can accomplish more than 10 times of what we were in the 1990. And all this development we need to send to the political stability and also the political how to say not political, the democracy political regime. And for number two, traditional industrial policy, two trade policy come in form of infant industrial protections through tariff or undervalue of local currency. This is quite technical that it's hard for you to understand if you never involved working in the macroeconomic policy. But for the first part, if you look through the Korean style of export-led growth policy, or we call it export-driven economic growth policy. It means that Korea case versus the Philippines, if you remember, right? The Philippines maneuver or introduce almost the same economic policy to Korea, but when they implemented it at that time, it turned that the failures of the Philippines. There are many problems there. The big problem, there are four main points there, but one of that is that the Philippines, I think it's similar to Malaysia, that they pursue the liberalization of trade and investment. So there's no restriction on the import of the raw material or whatever. So as long as there are big company coming into Philippines, they always welcome, and the policy there is that they try to incentivize the foreign direct investment or the foreigner who come to invest in Philippines, so they can import the raw material for free of import tax, VAT tax, or something like that. So at the end of the day, for another 10 years or 20 years until now, the Philippines have no strong base. Sorry, not have nothing, but there are some, but not really strong base in terms of local input producer, or we call it local content. When we're talking about local content, mean that the local company produce raw material, industrial input, and then supply to the local set up company, both local company and foreign company. But Korea case, in this case, it refers to Korean case and also Japan case, but let's say refer to Korea. It means that the Korean government may not allow or allow, but with subsidy to any sector that is very young or very early stage of development. For example, if you see that let's say fertilizer, the producing of fertilizer in the country, and this fertilizer producing is very important for the agricultural production, and also important to agro processing industry. So as the industry is just very weak compared to Japan or EU or US, so what Korea can do, just for example, actually there's no specific case on Korea on the agricultural sector, but there are some other case. So they try to put the barrier to investment, not through uh, not through not through the ban of the investment in the sector, but through subsidy. It means that the Korean government may finance the producer of fertilizer of Korean company in the Korea with some money, direct funding, or with the interest rate subsidy, or with the tax incentive subsidy to the local firm, so that the local firm can survive, because it is the young industrial that just come into play. So that is the first part. For the second part is quite complicated, because it related to the export policy. In other country, usually they use their own currency. Okay, so in US they use US dollar. In Japan they use yen, and in China they use yuan. In Korea they use won, right? And in Thailand they use baht. So don't look at Cambodia. We use dollar, baht, dong, or Khmer Riel. All those countries, they have their own, we call it trade policy. That trade policy have very thing to work with the value of the local currency. When I refer to local currency, it means that if Cambodia, local currency of Cambodia is real, okay? Local currency of Thailand is baht, local currency of Korea is won, okay? So in this case, the government, can devalue or undervalue of local currency. Why? When the value of local currency is cheap, it means that the price of producing good and export to foreign country is also cheap. So when you have the cheap price of the good, your product will be sell better. So that's why in this case, they say that, okay, they could have the infant industry through the tariff. Tariff, I mean import, tax exemption, special tax exemption, and VAT exemption, those tariff. And under value is, I already mentioned, is about the make your money cheap artificially, and then it make your produced good selling abroad cheap compared to your enemy or your competitor, so that your good will be sold more in international market. And for point three, it on the Korean, like I already mentioned, that in the 1960s they start with the export oriented policy, or export led growth policy, or export driven growth is the same word. And then in the 1970 to 80 they try to shift to the heavy industry, and also at the end of 1980 they shift to more on R&D innovation, or shift to the more on higher tax production in order to boost growth. And there they focus on the in-house R&D, and the government of Korea subsidy a lot to the private sector, and also university and the research and development association, and they have a lot of good mechanism to allow them to work to each other and share the research finding together, and they bring those player in and make a lot of impressive progress. And the last point is about industrial policy. We already mentioned that in the 1960s, we moved from light industry, that is garment or footwear industry, to shipbuilding industry, to telecommunication, to TV, okay, to steel sector. And then they move from time to time from the low value add production to a higher value add production. And at the end of 1990 to 2000, Korean already in the stage of high technology called logical produce good, and they already become the very main player compete with Japan, especially in the area of TV, color TV, telecommunication, shares fix, shipbuilding, something like that. So that is for question number one. I think for question number number two, uh, your friend already gave the answer, and I think that here I just highlight some point that I quoted also from uh, the book, and I don't want to go through it because your friend already summarized, and I just want to see the last point is the fourth one, the creation of public-private R&D consumption I mean association brought Korea huge success in telecommunication and information technology device. So I already mentioned about it in chapter 3, right? The bringing in the private sector, university, research institution, government institution together and work together, sharing the finding and develop the whole R&D by themselves. Of course, they have also the base from learning from Japan, US, and EU. As you remember, the adaptation of technology in Korea, there are 4 states, right? So here it come to their development and they become very successful. For number 3, there are a lot of information there, and I just highlighted a bit on that. And uh, you can remember back to the chapter 3 also. The first stage, they are assimilating foreign technology and know-how. They send, the very first stage that Korean have nothing is send the worker to on the job training or seminar or workshop in Japan at the time. Very often is in Japan, and they come back with the ability to operate machinery or to learn to identify issue or problem in the assembly line or factory. And then for a while they become going to another stage is I think what is another stage? I almost forgot. It's about licensing, right? After that, they go to joint venture, and then they go to the development of their own technology. So all the flow is related to this question number 3. I think it's just a recap of that. Yeah. So I think that what I had just mentioned, they also incorporate in stage 2, the co-development, homegrown research and development. So all the same. If you remember the chapter 3 that I mentioned, 3 or 4 steps that already answer here. But here is more on detail on how the Korean uh, drive or driven such kind of development in a detailed basis. For question number 3, the 3 stage of success and of learning and for entering high value add sector. So third stage, leapfrogging. Sorry, is it the same, right? Okay, sorry, it's the same. Number 3. Number 2, we already have, but number 3, not yet. So if you read through the chapter, they mention about the leapfrogging. And Korean come to teach, sorry, Japan come to teach Korea that if you want to catch up with them, they need maybe another 20 years or 15 years, because in the way that Japanese do, they have very stage of development. Before you go to 2, you need to success in 1. And then before you go to 3, you have to success in stage 2. So every stage, if Korea follow Japan, it's gonna take another 15 to 20 years to catch up with Japan. But Korea have a very exhaustive way of thinking and behavior. They take risks, take risks. They learn all from the Japan, and then they find out that okay, there are some step that need not to to fulfill before we go to another stage, right? So they have the shortcut to the development. Okay, so like we mentioned about uh, TV color TV, right? And Korea becomes successful like Sony nowadays, Sony, Samsung, Samsung, LG. They very become very successful, and not to mention about phone. Japanese phone and kind of technology are very advanced compared to Korea. Before I think 1998 and to 1990, but after 2000, Korea tend to catch up, and some area already surpass, like Samsung, right? They become the world biggest telephone seller in the world. I think it more than Apple. And TV, LG already become very successful in terms of technology development in such kind of TV sector. And not to mention again the shipping building industry, that is Korean is number one in the world, not only in Asia. So all this kind of development is not about following the step of the development like Korea or Europe did in the past, but it is for the how say the risk taking behavior of Korea, and the long vision that the Korean government had at that time. And if you look at China, is the same. I'm not sure whether how many of you have experience going to China. I can tell you that in 2018 that I went, the last time I went to China, China economy already case less economy. You cannot go to the pub not pub street, sorry, street food vendor without the Alipay or WeChat Pay. You cannot pay cash or buying noodle, let's say noodle in along the road, just like that small stuff vendor. They already become very digitalized. And if you look at the new building or residential area, they already have smart building, smart garden, smart road. If you go to Korea, okay, there's a lot of development too, but in terms of such kind of uh, 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 banking technology, in terms of payment technology, even Korea itself cannot catch up with China by now. Seriously, if you go there, in terms of payment system, they all go digitalized. They pay everything by Alipay, WeChat Pay, and everything. While you go to Korea and in Japan, you need to have cash in hand. Everywhere you spend cash. You can spend cash. Actually, you can pay by Visa card or Mastercard, but it's not the case in Korea. So Korea, Japan, sorry, China have also leapfrog way of doing things. And if you search Google, which country is the biggest solar power generating energy country, you will see it China. Semiconductor, electronic car are all in China, and not many of you or many people know that uh, China is the one who lead in many area in technology, like 5G. You see, US have never mentioned about 5G, even Japan or Korea, until the Huawei introduced such kind of technology to Europe that US, Japan, and Korea surprise. Oh, China already have 5G technology, but it's not about just saying. They already have in place, and everyone just playing especially US, they have no way to catch up in a very 5 year. So what they can do, they try to have the tech war with China by refrain or ban the Huawei product to sell in some part of the world, and they always go lobby everywhere that Huawei product is very spying hardware for the for the Chinese government. So actually the problem is with their problem, because in the Huawei technology itself, there are a lot of spare parts that use uh, 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 of the US technology and Taiwan technology, Korean technology, Germany and Japan. There's a lot of things going on. So leapfrogging is just like what I mentioned, but the very best way to do it is about having your own research and development, and the way that the Korean form in terms of government and private sector coordination are very, very important to success in this kind of target. And for the second step and third step, I think that we have already discussed, and I don't go detail. Overall, it's just kind of what I have already mentioned. And for the fourth question, at intra and intersectoral diversification, they are a bit technical definition, but let's try to have some example in order for us to understand. For the first point, we call it if industrial policy is successful, it should be able to achieve both intra and intersectoral upgrading and diversification. And the case of Korea and Taiwan very successful case that the world took it or take it for their model, growth model. And intra-sectoral upgrading and diversification, it means that within the same sector, okay, intra. If you say if you work in a private company, they have intranet, okay. So intranet, it means that the network that allow you to chart, to to store your document, to report your stuff to management or to your college through that network. But you can use only within your company or your group. So it's intra, I mean within your circle, okay, intra. So with same sector in this case, because we refer to the sector, from value added to higher value added. It means that you produce the same good, but before you sell in a very cheap product type, and then you upgrading it to the another type of product, but in the same sector, and then it called the upgrading and diversification, sectoral upgrading and diversification. For example, I think here is from the book, but let me give you from very example of Cambodia. It make you too easy understand. Let's say for the rest of our life I mean many years ago, we sell, let's say rice, paddy rice to China, sorry, to Thailand and Vietnam. Now we're still selling, but before we don't really have export of milled rice. Okay, milled rice means that you already go through the machine, not machine, the processing, and then you export it. In Khmer, I mean that we never export angkor, but we always export srau to Thailand and to Vietnam. The problem is we don't have capacity to process it, okay, and logistic to arrange it. But in 2010, the government come out and announced that we have the right promotion policy, and we will export milled rice. When I say paddy is srau, when I say milled rice is angkor, export milk, right? 1 million ton in 2015. There is a plan, right? So from there, the export of milk, right, in Cambodia to abroad, especially to Europe and also China, have jumped. And this is called intra-sectoral upgrading, okay? From selling paddy rice with low value added to milk rice. Why value added? If you sell straw, you just sell the raw product without any value add. If you sell straw, one kilogram is, let's say, 1,000 real. But if you sell encore or milk rice, you can get around $1 abroad. Okay, you see the difference, right? 1,000 to $1, and at the same time, you also create job, right? I have to hire someone to work for my machine. Okay, so that you create job and you also have the price of product export higher. We call it upgrading from selling paddy to selling milk, right? Okay. And diversification. Even the same sector, but you need to find some other product to sell it. What should be some product with the rice? You may not only export the milk rice, you may also export rice powder. Okay, rice powder is rice, but you make it powder and then you export, and you get higher price too, because the rice powder can use as for bread, for other cake. And another example is the rice also, but you export rice wine. Okay, like Japan, sake. Sake is made from tomato and rice. You see, it means diversification from export only paddy rice to meal rice, and then you go to powder, and then you go to wine, rice wine, and some other product. It is, we call it diversification. Okay, upgrading again from paddy rice to meal rice, and then diversification means that we can find other product with the same ingredient to export. So we call it intra-sectoral upgrading and diversification. Of course, you have the example here, but I just want to make sure that I give you another example in the case of Cambodia. And of course, we also have the case of mango here. And for inter-sectoral upgrading and diversification, inter, I mean in between, between, yeah, inter, I mean between. So for upgrading, you can see in the example for the Korean company, the big one, that before they, their company, construction company, and then now they become automobile. Automobile means car company, car producing company. And also another one is from garment to electronic. I think Samsung is LG, maybe LG. I forget the name of the company, but before the garment, they they earn the income through the garment sector. I mean clothing, shoe, traveling goods, and then to electronic like semiconductor, like uh, what else? Aircon. Okay, there are those like what other semiconductor? Sorry, electronic. There's a lot of electronic, right, related to the consumer goods. However, in terms of this development, they are having issue from one state to another. One thing is that the late newcomer perspective, There are issue. They are between the, like I mentioned, the how say, let's say Japan. Japan is the latecomer. Sorry, not latecomer. The starter. And Korea is just like newcomer or latecomer. And the problem with, if in the case of the same country, there are problem in terms of the success of one sector to another, and usually it related to the minimum wage or wage of the sector. For example, like again, in Cambodia now we have garment sector. Before, the minimum wage is $65 per year in, I think, in 2003 or something. But now it is a 200 or 192 or 195, I forget, but around that. It's the minimum wage now. So what they can do for the company that already set up in Cambodia, in terms of the garment sector, they need to move the production, from focusing on the low value add activity to a bit higher value add activity to catch up with the increase of the wage. What is the high value added in the garment industry? Now, or from the very start, we just bring in semi finished product from China or from Vietnam and then stick together, vậy đúng không? Norm mà cầnផលិតផលពាក់កណ្ដាលសម្រាប់to Cambodia, and then you just hire people to stick it together and become the full clothes or full bag or shoe, and then you re-export it in the name of Cambodia product, but actually it's very low value finished product. So because of the rate of the wage increase, the company start to, find out to create or to work with the high value add the production. What is high value add here? They should also focus on design, because now for the last 5 or 10 years, design and then the raw material or semi-finished product, they are all coming from abroad, from Vietnam, from China. That is very low value because you just stick together and send. But if you come to design and you focus on not to the shoe, normal shoe or something, you focus on Louis Vuitton or Prada or Coach or Boss or LV. So it is the value add or higher value add activity. And for the company that already exists longer, they also need to come up with another idea whether they can diversify the product or the business by focusing on new industry, so that they can be stay competitive and the business can be stay in business. And I think that's all for question number 4. Steel industry of POSCO. There's a lot of information, but I think I have a summary there. Right? Okay, here. There's a lot of going on with the POSCO, right? And the success of POSCO is not by chance. There's a lot of help from the government of Korea. And if you remember the chapter 2 or chapter 3, you remember that when the government of Korea shift from the light industry to heavy industry, they have nothing. So they start by working with the high school curriculum, in order to push all those students to learn the industrial skill, and then they come up with some skilled labor to serve in the new industry. But not only that case. They have a lot of other things that that the government have had POSCO. In here, you can see the summary that what the government have already supported the POSCO at that time to push the development of the shipbuilding in the steel and shipbuilding industry, especially the steel, because there are a lot of going on there at that time, and Korean did very good job. The first point is access long-term and low-cost foreign capital. So the Korean all go to check with Japan before, and then they move to US and EU for the secure of the long-term loan or financing to the steel industry. And I think the World Bank also involved in this case is based on the case study. So that you can see low capital for the investment. That is very big, support. And then purchase equipment and raw material. Yeah, the government also have on sourcing all this kind of input. We call it a production input. And construct port facility, water, electricity system, road and railroad they build the infrastructure for the POSCO already. Yeah. The POSCO not really spend money. The infrastructure the government already built for them. Research and technology training. They not only provide that, they provide research and technology training through the public-private partnership, through the research and development association. So all this kind of work there help to the POSCO. And pay reduced price on electricity, very, very big measures, gas and water and quality for discount for rail transport and port use, right? They're all very kind measure. Exempt from corporate tax and receive 80% tariff cut on import equipment. So all the financial support measures have been have POSCO to be very success at that time after for a while of implementation the policy. So in the big picture, we can say that the POSCO could be very successful in terms of two main or two big policy. One is the government support through low interest rate financing and tax cut. So all the stuff about. And second is the economic policy adopted by the government to diversify its economic base from low value to high value added. Before the government moved to heavy industry, they have their own very specific policy, and that policy introduced to tackle the issue in the development or in the investment of industrial, or we call it a heavy industry. So these two main policy have been the big change in Korea industrial development back to the 1970, 1980, and then 1990. I think that's all from my part. I think you guys have did a very good job. I just try to highlight there some part that I hope that you understand it well. So if you have any question, you can ask before we take a break, or yeah, maybe we can take a break and then we come back and have a short discussion on your research project. Anything before we take a break? No? So if no, let's come back at 7:50, okay? 25-minute break. So please be on time on that so we can finish it early so you can have a good dinner. So see you at 7:50, okay?
I'll leave the other side to that to the Russians. They can talk for themselves. I'm not going to speak for the Russians. I want to discuss a third view. Having read widely in the last 14 years, I no longer swallow the crap we were fed at school, and we continue to be fed in the media. Former Senator Ron Paul in the United States
Okay, guys, can we start now?
Yes, lecturer.
Yes, let's start with group one. With what the three topics or area that you have chosen to to be your potential research topic. You guys share with me in the Telegram, or you want to share on screen? Maybe share in Telegram is better, because I'm not sure whether you can share the screen or not. Or you send to me, I can share for you. You just take the picture if it's hard for sharing as a Word or as Excel, in case you use a phone. You guys hear me or not? I don't see anyone send a topic to the Telegram now by now. Oh, wait. Oh no, it's not that. Please send me the topic. Hello.
Lecturer, we are apologize. Group one, we haven't picked any. I mean, we haven't picked the topic of our interest yet. We haven't find one.
How can I take this answer? I have been clear with that, right? No, next week or last week. How about other group? Next time, if you are not clear about anything, ask me, okay? Not until the deadline and then everyone just come. I cannot find any topic, or you just come to ask whether it's only topic or what. How are you gonna respond to me like that? I already talked a lot last week about what you're gonna come up with. Not a really specific topic one, but there's some area or sector. I also gave you the example, like if you like the, the agricultural sector topic, or you like banking topic or whatever, and then now you come and say, I don't have, my team don't have any topic yet, and then you come, is that a topic or is that a what? So how come the interaction is widely miscommunicated? So let's move it to next week, and if you don't understand any topic or any of my words, come to me, personal message or whatever, okay? Not until deadline and you come to ask me like this. So please ask question. If you are not clear. So let's meet next week, and please come with the answer or with the suggested idea that I just suggested you. And if you are not clear, SMS or voice to me via Telegram, so I can guide you more. Okay. So I hope that next week there's no such kind of answer to me again. Let's say that this week maybe of my unclear guidance, so that make you guys confused. But I hope that next week there's no that excuse. So see you next week.